Local news that matters on Local 22 News.
At this place in history, we're in Burlington with Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, Steve Perkins. Steve, we're in a really weird spot. What are we doing here?
We're doing a little bit of urban exploring. So this is the kind of back parking lot for the Burlington Fire Department, right off of Main Street in downtown Burlington. But what we're standing in is kind of one of the few areas where you can see the old Burlington Ravine. This area of Burlington had a pretty large ravine that ran right through it. It separated what we know of as now the downtown core from further up the hill. It's thought that at some time in the distant past, it was a tributary or a piece of the Winooski River flowed down through here all the way to the lake.
So I would imagine that ravine was almost, like you said, kind of a border for the city, but as the city was growing, that would become a problem then.
A huge problem, because in some places this ravine was almost 30 feet deep.
How did the city tackle that then as it was growing and expanding?
So the first thing they did is said, hey, this is a great place to put a train. Central Vermont Railroad ran their train. In fact, the depot was right here where the fire station is above us. Eventually, they decided to move the train, and at that point, they started to fill in the ravine. And it became a good place for a sewer because you had natural water flow. And then ultimately, it just became that it was a hindrance. So they filled it in. And some of these great stories of filling it with trash. They just had people throw their trash into this ravine and slowly fill it up until we have what we have today, and you really can't see it.
What kind of timeline are we looking at? Because filling in the earth with trash isn't ideal, obviously, by modern standards.
It's not ideal at all. The train kind of went in the 1850s and moved by the 1860s. And then in the 1870s, it got converted to a sewer. And by the end of that decade and into the 1880s, they had really filled it in so that by the 1890s, the ravine was almost completely full. Now, but you can imagine if you filled this ravine with trash, it doesn't provide the best kind of footings for building. So if you walk through the city today, you can somewhat see where that ravine was because you have things like parking lots, retaining ponds, you see walls and kind of parking lots down low and the road up high. That's all evidence of where that ravine was.
Kind of putting my meteorology hat on for a second, that ravine offered really good drainage for the city of Burlington. And now that it's filled in, I'm sure that lends itself to some quicker flooding.
I'm the historian and you're the scientist, so can you tell me how this works? Why does it flood in this area?
Well, there's actually a peer-reviewed paper that was done a few years ago by the state climatologist Leslie-Ann Dupini-Giroux and some folks at the National Weather Service about when you take away these low points where all the water can flow to, it obviously takes longer to drain. And so really, filling in this ravine, while necessary at the time, certainly in some respects, obviously has led to consequences down the road today that we're still trying to mitigate with flooding in the city.
And they created this really cool map that I saw for this paper where they showed all of the recent flooding events in Burlington, and they all matched up with where this ravine used to be.
Yeah, just about perfectly. I mean, the evidence is clearly there.
At this place in history.